Welcome to Uninterrupted, the podcast from Forbes Cybersecurity, where we dive into the world of technology, cybersecurity, and IT solutions. We help your business stay protected and ahead of the curve. Whether you're a business owner, IT professional, or just tech curious, this is your go-to source for staying informed and staying secure.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Chris Hammonds, and with me today is our COO, John Phelps. John, say good morning.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
All right, guys, as always, we're going to dive straight into it. So, you've heard us mention different things about the podcast that we put out there. And one of the things I really want to just harp on is why are hackers doing what they're doing, right? What are they trying to do? It's obviously for some type of financial gain, right? So we've talked about the 3 bad outcomes that could happen. But today we're going to actually dive a little bit more in detail about each one of those outcomes and how we work backwards to help prevent such outcomes from happening. So, John, those 3 outcomes that we've talked about, tell us what those are.
Yeah, so we call them the 3 bad things. It's pretty easy for people to remember, but this is really everything that has to do with hacking has to do with money, especially at the small, medium business level. So when we talk about the 3 bad things, what we're talking about is a criminal accessing the financials, either directly or getting in the middle of some kind of monetary transaction to steal money that way. That's the most efficient for them. Getting in the middle of your sensitive data and stealing that and blackmailing you to get it back, or jumping into your operations, stopping your operations so that you think it's a good idea to pay them a ransom so that then they free up your operations again. So, yeah, we're going to delve into this topic and get a little bit deeper into each 3 of them. We got examples for you. We got a whole bunch of stuff, so stay tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start with, how they go in there to try to intercept a financial transaction. Let's start there.
So we've seen this in a lot of different ways, and I have a few different examples of this, but this is really the most efficient way for them. It takes them the least amount of time, it takes them the least amount of touch points, and it's really the best return on investment that they have because the other methods are contingent upon you giving them money, and this is they're stealing it in some method. So what we look at is one example I've had with this is somebody gets their business email taken over. So this was a company that called us out of the blue because they had a weird behavior going on with their email. And what had ended up happening is the bad guys were in their email account. They saw a email come through for a wire transfer. They got in the middle of that. They registered a new domain. They deleted that email, registered a new domain name, and it was something law.com, and they registered something lavv.com. They changed the bank account name, bank account number, routing number, and verification phone number, and they ended up stealing a few $100,000. Right? So that was a very quick payday for them for very minimal work. And so this is what we're looking at. But I see vulnerabilities when I go in all the time. And these aren't vulnerabilities like my system's not patched. These are vulnerabilities like once I get initial access into a company, whether that's to their computers or their email, what can I do that then would cause me to steal money? I've seen scenarios where they have sent out fake invoices, right? They'll send out a fake invoice as a company that's on all the company letterhead. They know what the invoices look like, and they send it out to your customers, and then your customer pays them instead of paying the bill that you had. Well, one thing, what happens when they do that? Can you prove that it wasn't your fault that happened? Are you going to go back and, if that company that you're working with has paid you an invoice and lost that money, are you going to go back to that company and say, oh, by the way, you still haven't paid me? You better have proof that it wasn't your fault that happened, right? Due to your own negligence or things like that, do you go to your cyber insurance to get it? They're going to want proof that happened. When I look at other aspects of this, I've seen cases where check washing happens. I mean, it's an old school attack, but somebody stole the outbound mail, physically mail out of the mailbox, right? They steal the outbound mail of the mailbox. They maybe had a mailbox key, or they stole it depending on where it was. If it wasn't a secure location. They steal that. They take the check that you're paying one of your bills, or somebody's paying you, and then they will go through and they will change the routing number and payment account, and they'll have it pay themselves instead, right? So the vendor's like, hey, we paid you, right? But they didn't because they paid the hacker, right? Well, the bank overturned that, some situations like that. Another one I've seen when I went into a company is I've gone in there and this specific company, but it's not the only time this has happened, but this specific company is a very interesting example for me. I go and do an audit, and they didn't want to give me the admin password. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just going to go get on endpoints and look around like I'm a hacker, right? See where it tells me to stop.
Makes sense.
So I get on this one computer and I end up finding the domain admin password within 20 minutes that I'm there. And this is just me looking around. I'm not running any tools or anything. I'm just clicking around as a user would. So we found something that didn't have the permissions that it should, which is another red flag that has to do with some of the other things later down the line that we're talking about. But what was really bad is they had a user that used to be a manager of the payroll. That user wasn't supposed to have access anymore, but they still had admin access, and their password was saved in a very clear text way for me to get it. So I logged into the payment gateway for their payroll, and I would have been able then at that point to change the direct deposit for every single employee to some other account. I would have been able to change the amount that that company got paid on an auto withdrawal, that person got paid on an auto withdrawal. And they would have had no idea what had happened because I would have been able to do it from the end user's computer.
So did you tell them you found the password after?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I told them the vulnerability because that's what we do.
Yeah,
we look for these vulnerabilities and we try to stop it. But if I was a bad guy, all it would have taken is one bad click from an email attachment to then get me remote access through some legitimate software means onto that person's computer. It didn't have multi-factor authentication. It didn't have anything looking for nefarious behavior. It didn't have application allow listing. Any of the things that would have stopped that, I would have been able to then steal the next paycheck from every single employee that they had and have it sent to me. And how long would that have taken to uncover? How long would that have taken for them to unravel what happened and find out their vulnerability and fix that? So hackers, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for an easy score. How do I get money the fastest? And the first thing that they do every single time is they try to go after the financials directly because that's the best return on investment for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's the easiest, and they can get some quick money out of it,
Yep.
right? So the next one I want to talk about is the importance of knowing, as a business leader, knowing where your data is flowing through your network, how it's flowing through your network, because that's one of the bad outcomes too, is they're going to take that data and try to blackmail you for that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when we talk about the 3 bad outcomes, every business has some level of them. I don't care what you do. You have some amount of each one of these things. You have financials you need to protect, you have sensitive data that you need to protect, and you have operations that you need to protect. And they're just different heights of these different pillars. And so every company that I've ever come across has some type of data that is sensitive, that they don't want released publicly, that they don't want bad guys to know, and they don't want it to get in the wrong hands. And so a lot of these companies have data that has to do with employees at minimum, that have to do with financial information, payroll, those items. And so when I look at past incidents that we've seen happen, one company that I know of that got hacked, the hackers stole 300 gigs worth of data. They were able to see what the data that was stolen from them, and this company ended up paying a ransom for the hacking group to say that they deleted that data because they said, hey, we're going to release it publicly, we're going to sell it to your competitors, we're going to do all those sorts of things. And there was not only financial information that was in the data that was taken, but there was sensitive data that had to do in there with jobs that they were working on, sensitive files that they didn't want released publicly, or that the vendors that they work with or the customers that they work with would not have wanted released publicly. So they ended up paying a ransom for that. The data has value. Social security numbers have value. When we look at things like CPA firms and why they got included in the GLBA Act that has to do with software data protection or has to do with client data protection, the reason is because they're a one-stop shop for data breach, for financial fraud, identity theft, because they have one W-2 has enough information to potentially be able to do identity theft for your entire family. Or you look at not a W-2 but a 1040 form for the IRS, right? And these CPA firms keep a bunch of this. So you have sensitive data, you have financial information. Every company has data they want to keep protected. And so what the bad guys do is they said, okay, most of these companies now, if you're anywhere modern and you're working correctly, they are going to have good backups. Hopefully, we've seen it not happen, but hopefully they're going to have good backups. And so when they stop your operations, they say, hey, we're going to get your operations back up and running. So what they've done now is they start stealing the data before they encrypt everything. And so they steal it, they copy it out, they send basically proof of life, hey, we have this data, do you want to pay this ransom for us to delete it, right? And then these businesses work on reputation, and so oftentimes when the ransom does get paid, they will delete that data. But it's another way to safeguard and guarantee that they get their money, because people stopped paying ransomware payments because, hey, I can get my operations back up and we're going to roll the dice on something else bad not happening. So they started doing that. I've seen multiple instances where, like I talked about before, when that person had access, when I got access to that person's payroll information, I then had all the sensitive data for all the employees of the company. I've seen scenarios where, hey, there's a line of business application that's used and it's in the cloud, right? But I logged into, right, somebody else's server. Right?
Right.
So I logged into that cloud app and everybody was supposed to be locked down. I logged in as a normal user account and they had basically high-level access to everything. I was able to pull all the sensitive data and gain access to all of it. I could have stolen all that from them. And this was an application that they didn't have to get from their office. It's a cloud app. And it was a password that somebody reused. So you really have to pay attention to all of these things because it's what the bad guys are going after.
And hackers could tell what that data is going to be worth, right? How valuable, like if there's a company doing DoD type of work, anything like that, their data is going to be a little bit more on the pricier side. So they can see all of that.
It's their business, right? So it seems callous to say this, but they operate like large businesses, and we've talked about that in the past. And so you, as a business owner, you know how much the things that you sell are worth.
Right.
They sell stolen data.
Yeah.
It's their product. They know how much that's worth. And so they have a dollar amount that's on every single bit of data that they have, either from them holding you for ransom for it or from them directly selling it on the dark web. The other thing that's interesting by this as well that we've seen, and we've seen lots of examples of this from talking to our partners across the country and globe, is they get into your financial information and maybe they can't steal the money directly. But when you tell them that you can't afford to pay that ransom that they're asking, well, they know exactly how much your company makes and how much money you have in the bank because they pulled those records. They can't get the money, but they're like, oh yeah, here's your bank statement that says you have $900,000 in the bank. You can afford it.
Wow.
And so what do you do when that happens, right? That money was allocated for something else or is meant for something specific to help your livelihood and everything. And so now you've given them the data to counter negotiate with you. You can't afford it. Oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can afford it. We have your numbers basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me ask you, if they go to pull your data, then they're going to try to hold it hostage. They're going to blackmail you for it. But let's say they determine this data is really not that valuable. What's kind of the next step from there? What are they going to try to do?
So this is your classic scenario that everybody knows about, and this is the ransomware. All right, this has been going on for decades now. You get there, you go to a computer, and it says, hey, this computer's been encrypted by so-and-so ransomware company. Go on the dark web and pay us money to get your data back or to get your operations running. What this is meant to do is cause operational discomfort. And like I said, everybody has different pillars of the things. There's a lot of companies who the pillar, if they can take some critical piece of equipment or process offline for you, then your business stops making money. If your business stops making money, then all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, maybe a ransomware payment is a very good idea to get my business functioning again. And so they know that, and this is the classic ransomware. And we've seen a ton of examples of this. Just recently, we talked about this in the past. I had a company who called us out of the blue after they'd been hacked, and they shut down all the server, they encrypted the server, all the PCs. It was a 7-person company. It took 3 full weeks for us to get them back into running at, we're going to call it full capacity, although it wasn't, because they had to restore to 18-month-old data.
Right.
Their backups got deleted, corrupted by the hacker. They had to restore to an old offline backup copy that was 18 months old. So that company spent 3 weeks getting back to a state that wasn't even ground zero to what they were before. When I look at another company that called us after they'd had a hack, it took them 9 months until they returned to fully operational status. Right? And so these are very, very devastating events for the companies. They're meant to be so that the company thinks it's a very good idea to pay that ransom and so that the hacking organization gets their money. Even if you have everything stored in a backup. Like, let's say the scenario of like, hey, I have everything stored in a backup, what's going on? Once they encrypt these devices, it takes days to get things back up and running. So say they encrypted your server. Do you know how long it takes to recover that infrastructure, to restore it from backup? Do you know how long that downtime is going to take for that recovery window? Most companies that we deal with have never done a full business down scenario where they're restoring from a full backup. They restore pieces here and there, little files, but they've never done a full recovery. That can take days, depending on where your data is stored and how much data it is and how fast the physical connections are between them. There's a hard limit to how fast data can transfer depending on your networking speeds. We'll look at other scenarios where we have to replace hard drives in those PCs for forensic things and reformat all the PCs from scratch if they were hit. There's a lot that can go on to getting you back up and running. And even sometimes in events that seem very innocuous, where it hasn't gone to a full encryption event yet, just detecting that a threat actor was on the network and starting to do nefarious behavior, even if it gets captured and shut down before anything actually really bad has happened, if you don't detect that early enough, then you could still be spending half a day or more just getting it so your employees can work again after recovering from a lockdown status. So you really want to try to put in the safeguards to prevent that happening, because even a half day of downtime for your business, just think about it, having all your employees be off for a half day or a full day, how much that cost you. Now, depending on the severity of the attack, extrapolate that out to 3-4 days, a week, 3 weeks, 9 months, right? It's devastating for these companies.
And another way to look at that too is, let's say somewhere on your production line, you can't have certain things sitting somewhere for too long. Let's say you're a plating company, you have some of your materials are dipped in acid, they're only supposed to be in there for a certain amount of time. Well, what happens if that's when they shut down your operations? And those are some things you have to consider as a business leader, is what part of your operations, if they were to shut it down,
and they're going to
trouble you the most?
And they're going to shut it down to that time frame that it is really bad for you, right? If you're a CPA firm and they get you right before tax deadline, right? You're going to have a very high incentive to pay that ransom so you can get back running so you can finish doing that thing. If they're a law firm, they have access to your data. They know they're going to wait until you have that big court case to hit you whenever you're most panicked, you're most affected, so that you're going to want to pay them that money. So how do we go through and prevent those things from happening? And stay tuned with us. We're going to go over more of these things about how to actually stop this, how to do it, how to protect your business. Look at our other episodes. Look at our blog articles. Talk to us, though. Guys, we can help you out with this, and we can help you design systems to prevent these things from happening. And an initial phone call with me, 15 minutes, and we can start identifying what's actually going on in your company and seeing if it makes sense for us to have a further conversation to see, how protected you are from these outcomes and how at risk your business really is and how resilient you really are.
And no matter the size of your company as well, you're going to fall under one of those three outcomes. One of those three outcomes are going to happen to you. Otherwise, your business wouldn't be making money, essentially, right?
Right. You need to protect from those three outcomes if you're a business of really any size. And we see this from one-person organizations up to 1,000 or more, right? It's the same kind of deal, because it's core fundamental functioning of how business works. You have these three things because of what allows you to be a business and make money.
Very good point. And thank you, John. And as John said, stay tuned. We're going to talk about these topics and more on our next episode. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Uninterrupted, a podcast from Forbes Cybersecurity. We hope you walked away with practical insights to protect your business and stay ahead of the latest cyber threats. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. For more tips, resources, and cybersecurity updates, visit Forbes, that's 4bis.com, and follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay vigilant and stay uninterrupted.